I was horrified this morning to turn on my television, the magic box we have in our living rooms, and all other sorts of rooms as well now, to see a programme that advocated the use of video games as being absolutely beneficial, and what is more, was encouraging people to use them to calm themselves down in stressful situations. At the end of the programme, I have to mention also, it's one of those public service announcement things, you know, like if you are in trouble or whatever, you know, ring the Samaritans and so on and so forth. What hit me was the fact that these video games are basically taking over our lives in a way, in the Western Hemisphere anyway, taking over our lives in a way reminiscent of the Orwellian Big Brother 1984 scenario. And I watched in increasing horror as a sort of an amoeba-like, strobe-like, wax lava lamp type emanations were shown in sort of various sort of rather strident colours, really, sort of pinks and blues and blobs moving to the sound of a sort of fairly tuneless dirge, and dreadful negative vibes were coming from that, which I picked up anyway, as you would if you have attuned yourself to the vibrations that are all around us, not just the mundane but the extra sensory ones. And these gave way to sort of, you know, look like sort of coral tentacles, sort of thing you see waving around at the bottom of the sea, looking fairly not terribly pleasant. Obviously, we know they're waving about looking for something to eat. It seemed to me to be a total negation of the great gift that humankind has been given. Well, I always say there are always blessings among the curse and curses among the blessings. And our imagination, of course, is what causes us to fear. And it also causes us to have wonderful thoughts and to perceive wonderful things. But the basic thing is that we are given our imagination as a gift along with our life. And this sets us above other animals. We have that capacity of imagination which actually leads us to be able to connect with the higher frequencies of the next life to this one, that other world, numerous other worlds some people would have in the terms of dimensions of life. And by providing something that mimics our imaginations but is not of it, it's actually stunting, I believe, our ability, God-given, to not just imagine but also to connect with that world of spirit. And that, I think, is why I find it totally horrifying. The human race needs its imagination projected from within its own individual brains, not just to watch somebody else's projection of their imagination, but to have that for ourselves, and to be able to therefore and thereby connect with our higher self and with those beings, entities in those other vibrations who live in a higher frequency than ourselves. So meditation itself, while it calms the brain impulses down to an alpha rhythm, which is calming and pleasant, I don't believe that using other people's images and hypnotic music is actually our way forward as a human race. In fact, I think it's going to prevent, or it's trying to prevent, that spiritual progress that we all need. It's the path that we're all on, the path of progress, spiritual progress. And the fact is that to be able to connect with that higher realm of life and thought is such a blessing, and it has helped me ever since I learned how to develop that ability. And I have been privileged to be able to pass the knowledge that I have gained through my experience on to countless others. And here I am now, trying to spread some more information. One of my dear friends, she founded the Institute of Spiritualist Mediums, Eileen Roberts, wrote a book, a pamphlet that she called Misconceptions in Mediumship, in which she addressed quite early on in the booklet's pages meditation and its application, and really it's still valid. Of course it's valid. I can hear her telling me off now. And she said, and she says, at one end of the scale, the need of many folks to calm and still themselves, to rid themselves of stress and thus regain better health. For these people, the short meditative period at the start or at the close of the day can become a restorative self-control which gradually gives great benefit. Now, to meditate, we always close our eyes and we imagine ourselves in some nice place, talking to some nice people, doing some nice things. And within that context, we feel much better within ourselves. And of course, our spirit within feels better. And it's our spirit within that helps so much towards our physical well-being. And Eileen said it takes some longer than others to relax enough to reach that alpha brain rhythm necessary. You know, we mentioned that. But she says here a few arm stretches, or those who can do it, slow and calmly to relax the tense muscles, and then in a quiet spot, sitting down in a calm position, and then slow measured breathing, slowly to refresh and calm, not to go to sleep, and not to achieve a trance-like state. And she says that by this means that can be achieved, and the meditative practice can then begin. So, and she suggests that you may like to pray while you're contemplating in this way, and she says how important that is. And of course we know very well, don't we, that this is an absolute truth. Now, many mediums, in fact, as they develop, many people developing their mediumship abilities, which is that ability to receive communication from loved ones in spirit to us, that we may be able to pass on to others, their loved ones. That comes about by elevating our mental frequency, calming our brain waves, actually increases our ability to communicate with that finer frequency. And many developing mediums wonder whether they've imagined what they receive or whether they haven't, because of course it's our imagination and our imagination wavelengths that actually connect us with them upstairs. And we soon find out that if we are imagining something, we can dismiss it from our minds. Say, no, we don't want to imagine that anymore, or I don't want to do this meditation more, I shall come back and just be my ordinary self again, regain my ordinary brain pattern. And the thing is that if spirit, those in spirit, give us information on that wavelength, we can't just dismiss it, it stays there. I always say to people, imagine a handbag. Yes, a handbag. Imagine it. Now, you don't want to imagine it, let it go. And it will just go. If those upstairs give you a picture of a handbag or an image of a handbag and you don't want it, you have to really ask because it just stayeth there and they have given it to you. So it's it comes with its own energy, you see. Spirit has its own energy, of course. Our energy, which is earthly, we control in our own minds. But when they give us something, it's just the same as if I gave you a gift, or it's just as easy as that. So I think that to try and short circuit that ability of imagination is the most vile thing that can ever happen to the human race. Think of all the wonderful things that have come about by connecting our imagination to that spirit world. All those wonderful inventions, the fact that I can sit and talk to you on this machine, this has all been as a result of one person, a few people imagining, and through that imaginary thinking received inspiration. And of course all inspiration ultimately comes from God, the Great Spirit. So there we are. We've mentioned Eileen, bless her, now in the spirit world herself. And I was very fortunate myself that after I'd been developing as a medium for a few years, I was offered the job as editor of Psychic News. And that was an absolute revelation in itself. I came into contact with so many good people, spiritualists, and all these, everybody who was just sort of into it because it was something that they could do and they enjoyed, and they loved messages and so on, and to people who sort of deeply into the academic side of it all and the philosophical side of it all, and all kinds of different people from all different walks of life. And I was able to read many books that were there in the Psychic News offices that had been sent in. And of course, as you know, I've written some myself now. But there was this wonderful graphic booklet that was made called Voices from the Dead, by Gary Keener and Neville Randall. And I think it was about 1978 that it was published by Psychic Press when they were in Great Queen Street. So That was a very long time ago, because Psychic Press, of course, was brought up by the SNU in 1995, and in 1996 I became their editor. But it says focus on facts, and there's sort of, look, there's some nice things to look at. If you can see that, I believe that you'll be able to stop your machine and read and have a look at things. And it talks about all sorts of different things, the history of spiritualism itself, and of course it all hinges on mediums. Now those mediums and great thinkers would never have been able to develop had they not had their imaginations to be able to work overtime. And if you go back as far as ancient texts, sacred texts, they're all instances of where imagination was taken over by inspiration, and that inspiration came from God, ultimately filtered through spirit to the medium below. And the fact is, we are all below, but we don't need pushing even further below, metaphorically speaking, by video games that are trying to block our own imaginations. And the very worst, of course, are putting in place violent and aggressive notions and images, and these must sear onto the subconscious once they've passed the conscious mind. And we are all victims of our subconscious, aren't we? And of course that comes back to the fact that so many people feel miserable and stressed and strained because their subconscious is uneasy. And those video game things are definitely undermining the goodness of human beings. And I think that all other deliberations on that will be best kept for another time. One of the things I learned when I was developing my mediumship and speaking was that 15 minutes was really about the limit for an address in a church or at a service, and similarly at any other gathering, really. So I hope that you've had something to think about, that you can imagine, and that you will undertake your own meditations, and that you will not be drawn into watching video games that offer a calming effect, because ultimately they're going to calm you out of thoughtful existence. So I'll say God bless to you, and I hope that this has been useful to you.